Episode, I'm talking to champion trader Kevin Davey about 3 defining moments in his trading career. You're going to hear some fun stories and some invaluable trading lessons. So make sure you hear all 3 parts of this episode. But let's get on to the first episode of The Journey to Success with Kevin Davey. Good to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Andrew. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research because you've been on the show a few times, and I just had a look at what episodes you've been on. And according to my notes, you've been on here, I think 5 times now, which is incredible. We spoke about how to detect a failing strategy, how to spot a trading scam. That was a really good one. Building effective entries and exits, building trading strategies, and trading goals. So, can you remember all of those?
Yep, and I think there was one more with that I did with Michael Cook.
Oh yes, that's
collaboration.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that one. But anyway, they were all really great episodes. So if anyone wants to see those past discussions I've had with Kevin, head over to the bettersystemtrader.com website or the YouTube channel, and you can listen to what Kevin and I discuss there. Kevin always drops a lot of amazing insights. So I'm really excited to be chatting to you today, Kevin, with this new series called Trading Triumphs, The Journey to Success. So this series, well, in all the other shows that we've done together, discussions, we really talk tactical, I guess. We're talking about specific trading tips and strategies and things like that. This one is a little bit different. We're going to, we've got 3, I guess, defining moments in your trading career, and we're going to dig into those and see if we can figure out some, I guess, universal principles that that you've discovered from those that can apply to everyone else. So how does that sound?
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, how about we start kind of at the beginning. It's not the very beginning of your trading journey, but this is I guess, a moment that a lot of traders have to face, and a lot of traders, I guess, a lot of traders are looking forward to that moment, and that is the moment where you go from where you're working in maybe a full-time role or some kind of job, and you want to switch to full-time trading. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things that need to, I guess, align before you can make that a successful transition, which I know you have obviously transitioned to, since you're being a full-time trader for quite a while now. So can you take us back to that moment where you, I guess, or maybe even just before that, where you've decided that you're going to go full-time trading, what led up to it and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, so like anyone else, I started out as a part-time trader, and this was kind of like a hobby that I would do every night kind of thing, work on trading systems and ideas and that sort of thing. And always in the back of my mind, I said, wow, this is what I do as a hobby. I'd love to do it full time. And I obviously just didn't feel comfortable enough, because to do it full time, you've really got to be pretty good at it. So I kind of kept that just in the back of my mind. That's my dream one day. And along the way, I started entering some trading contests, and then I eventually won one and finished in second place a couple times. And when that happened, that really got me to thinking that, hey, maybe I could make a full-time go of this. So what I ended up doing was I spent a bunch of time and just thinking power, I guess, of, hey, how could I do this? How could I make this a full-time career? And, I consulted with people who had done it or were thinking of doing it, like, how much capital do you think you need? And what kind of returns and drawdowns are you looking at? So I did a lot of research before I really even thought about it. And then I just kind of put that plan into action. And a couple of years after first winning one of those trading contests, an opportunity came up with my full-time job, where we were bought out by a bigger company, and I was one of the people in charge of the company at the time. And they said, well, if you stay for a year, at the end of that year, we'll give you a full year's bonus and salary, in one lump sum. And I
Nice.
literally went home that day and told my wife, I said, 1 year from today, I'm quitting my job. What do you think? And surprisingly, she said, yeah, go for it. Because she always believed in me. But the amazing thing looking back on it now, we had, I think, a 2-year-old and like a newborn at the time. So,
Wow.
if you think about moms, being nesting type people and looking for
Yeah.
security, to have the main breadwinner come home and say, "Hey, I'm quitting my 20-year career to go off and trade," is kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
it ended up working out, and I think it really worked out because I had such a detailed plan and a detailed approach to it.
Yeah. So you said that one day you thought maybe I can make a go of this. What kind of time period are we talking about from when you had that thought to when you actually left? How many? Sounds like there was quite a few years in there. So how long did that
Yeah,
take?
it was probably um, at least 3 or 4 years of uh, serious thought about it, and then a couple of years before that was more like wishful thinking. But I wanted to make sure as a part-time trader that I felt very comfortable with what I was doing and how things were working before I'd ever think of going full time. Um, because hey, if things go wrong, then all of a sudden, whoop, you're done. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to make it a transition where it was permanent.
Yeah, right. So it sounds like you had quite a few years of trading track record to as evidence to prove that this could be done. What kind of impact? Sorry, once you decided that you were going to leave and you had that chat with your wife and who's nesting and having babies and all that kind of thing, did that have any kind of impact on the way you traded? Did you adjust the trading with the idea that you would have to cope with this in 1 year's time?
Um, to an extent, it did because it was all part of just the calculation of how much money am I going to trade with, and so for example, when I won the trading contest, I was a little more ambitious
Mm,
as far as how much risk I was willing to take. And then, but then when you start thinking about doing it full time, you're really worried about staying in the game. And it's not necessarily, oh, I've got to hit a certain high percentage return. It's more like I just want to reduce my risk as much as I can. And so that kind of factored into it more than I was thinking. But somebody had told me before I started that you'd probably need $2 to $3 million to have enough return, 2 or 3 million in your trading account
mm.
to get enough return where you felt comfortable at full-time trading. And I didn't have nearly that much. And I thought this person was crazy. I was like, oh, you don't need that much. But when you think about it, if you have $2 million, let's say, and you earn 20%, that's $400,000. For most people, that would be pretty good for an income, and that's 20%. Which 20% is, depending how much risk you put into it, can be pretty tough. So having enough capital to do it was something that now looking back on it, I'm like, ooh, I did not have enough. And I was a little too reckless, even though I didn't think it at the time.
Mm, yeah. So how did you actually work out how much capital you would need when you went full-time trading?
What I did was I just kind of looked at all the systems I was looking at trading, all the little algos, and figured out, well, if I want this kind of rate of return, or you add them up, and this is the kind of rate of return they should give, and how much do I need to live off of, and that kind of thing. The other part of the equation was I made sure I had money set aside. I had probably, I think, about 18 months
Mm,
of just living expenses. and a lot of that came from that lump sum from my previous job. And so I was able to say, okay, well, I'm going to put that in a separate account, and then we can draw off of that. And part of that was a lot of it was psychological, where I didn't want to have an account where every month I was withdrawing money to pay living expenses, because psychologically, if you know you're withdrawing money and let's say you had a losing month, that would just become a killer. Then you're like, oh my gosh, now I got to make twice as much back to build that back up. And so I tried to keep things separate, where I said, hey, this is my trading account, and this is going to be only my trading account. It's not going to be for personal expenses. That turned out to be a really key thing, because it allowed me to be calm and say, hey, no matter what happens, I've got a year and a half. In worst case, I always had in the back of my mind, I said, well, I could still go back to my old career. I didn't really want to, but I always said, hey, worst comes to worst, I've got kids to feed, a family to take care of. So in the end, that's what I've got to do, and not worry about being a failed trader or, a failed full-time trader. I've just got to do what I've got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that 18 months of living expenses was adequate? Was it too much?
I think it was adequate. I think that was good, because eventually it just kind of morphed into just extra money, where it wasn't necessarily dedicated to living expenses as my trading picked up. But certainly having it as a kind of cushion or a life raft or whatever you want to call it, but knowing it was there to protect me, even if my trading went terribly wrong, I'd still be able to live. That was a big difference. And that, that kind of goes back to the thing they always say, don't trade with money you can't afford to lose.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely true. And psychologically, it helped me a ton.
Yeah. So take me to that day then when you finally left. It's like the last day in the office and you're walking out the door. How did you feel?
Pretty good. It was good, because I was like, I'm free. And the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that, I was sort of trading, but I really didn't jump into, day one trading full time kind of thing. I kind of took a break for a while and just kind of de-stressed from everything, and then was able to jump into it, kind of ease into it. So that was nice, because it was a great career. I was in aerospace and I liked it, but it wasn't my passion. My trading seemed to be my passion. I always tell people, you'll know your passion because it's going to be the thing that you work on when you're not working your full-time job. If you're spending a hobby, doing whatever, hey, if you can make that hobby a living, you might actually like it. And that might be your passion.
Yeah. And so what about the rest of your family, I guess your wife or, other family relatives and things like that? How did they feel on that day? Were they supportive, or were there any kind of hesitations?
I'm sure my my mom, I'm sure she was freaking out, but she never said anything that I remembered. And the rest of the family didn't really say anything. And the one who really mattered was my wife, and she was 100% behind me. And that's turns out I tell people that over and over again, how huge spousal support, your significant other, how big their support is in your trading or to your trading. Don't underestimate it. But if you have somebody who's always looking at you and say, oh, you lost money today, and you're no good, and you'll never survive with that. But if you have somebody who's supportive and say, hey, I believe in you, it's I can't even say huge because it's
Mhm.
beyond huge how much of an impact that has to a
Yeah.
trader.
Yeah. Did you have any moments after you quit where you've like, holy crap, what have I done? What am I doing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
I already mentioned how I realized I didn't have enough money.
Yeah.
And so I was taking more risk than I thought. And I started to wonder, hey, is this really going to work? Somehow in the back of my mind, I was thinking, hey, I'll make money every week and it'll be just like a job. And it's not at all. uh, and even if you have years of part-time success in trading, when it comes down to days and weeks and even months, uh, compared to a full-time job where you put the time in, you get money, you get paid. Hey, trading, you put time in and you might lose money. And so,
Yeah.
there were months where I'd lose money and I'd be like, oh boy. And that's when you start wondering about it. But I, I had my past success to kind of fall back on and say, hey, I've done it before. I could probably do it again. It's not easy, but this is what I love. And so this is what I'm just going to keep pushing through.
Mm.
And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So just as I've been jotting down some notes here as you spoke, and it sounds like there was a couple of key things here that really helped with, I guess, a successful transition from the corporate life into full-time trading. So I've written down that you had support from your spouse. You had considered the capital requirements, and you had, living expenses. So you had a bit of a backup there financially. You also had a backup, whereas you could have always gone back to your job if it didn't work out, and thank goodness it worked out for you. And also, you'd proven that you could trade already. You had a couple of years of track record. So they're all some pretty important things, I think. Was there anything else, do you think, that really contributed to a successful transition?
Probably the one other big thing was the dealing with the freedom. Uh, because now all of a sudden, I went from 20 years of having a boss, having somebody to answer to, having defined tasks, to now it being just me. And if I didn't want to do anything, I didn't have to, which was cool in the beginning because I want to take the kids and go swimming. I can do it. But, I always had to think about, well, yeah, I can do that. I can not work for 2 weeks, but eventually it's going to catch up with me. And so that freedom also becomes kind of a noose where if you're not careful, that's going to choke you off and it's going to prevent you from succeeding. So you really have to learn to budget your time, budget your tasks, and focus on the important things. And that's probably true for, I'm sure, for any small business out there and anyone working for themselves. But that self-motivation, that's really important, and it's more important than I thought it was going to be. Uh, once I saw it and I realized, I was like, okay, I got to really make a go of it. And, trading, as you know, is not nearly as easy as people make it seem, and
Yeah.
it's a hard career.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an interesting point you make, actually, because going from a full-time role or a corporate kind of job where there's inbuilt accountability, right? You've got to do your job, otherwise you're kicked out. But if you don't answer to anyone, maybe but your wife, I guess, or your family, there's no real accountability there. You've got to do it for yourself. So I think
Right.
you raise a really good point there. Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that you had a detailed plan. We've kind of touched upon some of those things that were in your plan. Was there anything else that you think traders need to consider when they're looking at doing this for themselves? What should they plan for?
Probably one thing that's worth considering is you're going to put a lot of time into what you're doing trading wise, and you can be a full-time trader but not necessarily have full-time trading as the only thing you do. And what I mean by that is a few years ago, I actually had a bunch of people come to Cleveland for a weekend of trading information. And one of the things we did is we had a roundtable on the last day of anyone who identified as a full-time trader. And I think there were 5 of us in the group. And we went around and talked about, full-time trading, because obviously everybody wants to do it. And of the 5 people, only one person was actually a full-time trader, in that trading was the only thing he made money on. All the other 4, and it was including myself, all did something else. So, I teach a course. Somebody else worked as a commodity trading advisor, and so had a little fun. Somebody else had a home office, like a family office that he managed. And somebody else actually sold trading signals through a broker. So all these people had said, yeah, I'm a full-time trader. Yet they also had all these other related things to help them. And, at first people were like, well, you're not really a full-time trader then if you're doing other things. But really you are, because it's all trading related and one helps the other. And it's all about, to me, it's all about smoothing the equity curve, your personal equity curve of your income. And, in trading, you have losing weeks, but let's say you had something else on the side that could level it out. And that turns out to be something worth considering, because to be a really good trader, at some point you're going to realize, yeah, I'm pretty good at this. And also you'll realize, hey, I know more than probably 99% of people out there. And maybe people are willing to pay for my expertise. And for me, it really all started with a book publisher coming to me and saying, hey, I've seen your past success. Would you be willing to write a book about your trading? And then things kind of took off from there. But that's something for people to consider. Don't get pigeonholed in thinking, hey, I can only do this. And a related thing would be, even just because maybe you algo trade doesn't mean you can't look at other types of trading to help with other income streams. So maybe you look at some kind of option selling or something like that, something to offset and try to do some different things. It's all about trying to reduce your risk.
Yeah.
And that usually helps.
Yeah, that's a really good point you make, Kevin. I'm sure you've got this before, people saying, well, if you're such a good trader, why do you teach? And they completely miss the point that, it's like when you're building trading strategies, you want to diversify to have a smoother portfolio, and you're just extending that principle to your life, right? You want to have multiple income streams, and one of the main ones is trading. But as you mentioned, you don't make money every day, every week, or every month in trading like you do in a corporate job. So you really got to figure out how can you smooth your personal income and your trading income as well by looking at different avenues. Yeah.
I mean, to me, I always tell people, well, why do you do it? And I say, well, more money is better than less money. And if people are willing to pay for my expertise, it's kind of, I always sort of look at, like, consider celebrities. They're famous for some reason, but they're always willing to promote things to get more, to make more money. And why shouldn't they? If people will buy and pay for their endorsements, hey, more power to them.
Yeah, exactly. So you've given us a lot of great insights, Kevin, into your journey from full-time employment to full-time trading. How do we wrap this up into a nice little package for people who are potentially looking or thinking about this, or maybe they're about to do it, this transition? What advice would you give them?
Okay. Well, first, make sure you have a history of part-time success, and it's not 3 months, 6 months. I'm talking probably a couple of years. And you might say, oh man, I can't wait that long. Well, think about whatever career you're in now. You probably spent years either studying at a university to get into it,
Yeah.
or you've had years of on-the-job experience before you got to where you're at. So it takes time. And you want to have that background of past success as kind of like a confidence builder. So that definitely. 2, make sure you have enough capital to start, and be realistic about what you can handle as far as drawdowns and what kind of profits you might get. Most people are way underfunded to start. 3, have spousal or significant other support. Make sure that people around you support what you're doing, and they feel comfortable that you can do it. And then the last thing is make sure you have that nest egg, or living expenses set aside. A year to 2 years is probably a good number. And make sure, if you're going to make a go of it, you're not going to make a decision after 1 week of, oh man, I'm done. I lost money this week, so I'm quitting. You got to give it time to play out. And I think a year to 2 years is pretty reasonable. And if after that time, the writing will probably be on the wall, and you'll say, you know what, I don't think I'm ever going to make it. And that's fine. That's when you start thinking about plan B. Okay, well, where do I go with this? What do I do now? So you always got to kind of have a plan in the back of your head of what you might do. And I think if you put all those things together, you should be pretty well off, and pretty well on your way to full-time trading.
Yeah. Well, an excellent way to summarize that. Thanks, Kevin. So that was defining moment number 1, moving from full-time employment to full-time trading. Well, that's it for part 1 of my discussion with Kevin Davey. Now, if you liked that one, wait till you listen to part 2. Kevin's going to share a story about trading a strategy from a book that generated so many losses that he had to keep topping up his trading account, and the bank clerk got to know him by name. How is that? So he's going to share what happened to his trading account, how he got out of that situation, and some lessons that we can all uncover in our own trading. So that's a great story. I think you're going to enjoy it. Make sure you catch part 2.